The 26-27 Premier League season is upon us, but there have been monumental changes at the top, at the bottom, and everywhere in between. Is the Premier League about to change forever? Yes, people, welcome to Total Football, my new football channel where we take a look at the latest football news, we react to it, we dissect it, we take it apart, and we try and figure out what's going on. And today we're going to talk about the 26-27 Premier League season, and just some things that have been rattling around in my head pertaining to the makeup of the Premier League. What are the chances of some of the nearly runs from the last few seasons challenging for the title? Is it just a given that Arsenal are going to retain it, or will some of the new boys on the block give them a run for their money? But guys, before we get into it, don't forget to smash the like button, subscribe to the channel so we can get some more of this out to some more people. Right, so the big news really is not even Arsenal being the champions, it's Pep Guardiola leaving Man City, isn't it? The 26-27 season will mark 10 years since anyone other than 3 clubs won the Premier League. And it really, until this year, it was only 2 clubs, because in the 8 years before the last season, Man City won 6 and Liverpool won 2. And the rest of them all went to Pep Guardiola's Man City. To say that he dominated the Premier League for the last decade is a bit of an understatement, to tell the truth. So we're heading into a bold new era, and that bold new era is being kicked off by an absolutely wild transfer window where Tottenham are doing everything they can to try and find their way back into the top half of the table. Despite Chelsea's persistence for buying youth products in the last 4 years, they are finally getting some experience and some top Premier League players into their squad. Liverpool and Manchester City have made massive changes at the top. You would argue that one of them is potentially an upgrade, while one of them is definitely a downgrade. And thus far, Arsenal were yet to reinforce their squad after their Premier League title. So let's talk about Arsenal first, right? Arsenal won the Premier League, and fair play to them. Look, disclaimer, I am a Chelsea fan, so didn't love it, but respect the hustle, man. Respect the hustle. Like, I'm the first to take the mick out of the sticky, stodgy Brexit football with free kicks and long throws. But at the same time, when Jose Mourinho and Antonio Conte were putting forward defensively astute football in order to win titles, I didn't care. So look, I'm not taking away from how they won the league. A win is a win. It is what it is. But there is a possibility that the very method that Arsenal used to win the league last season is potentially detracting some of their top targets from wanting to join them, right? I am, of course, talking about Morgan Rogers. Morgan Rogers and Arsenal were talking for a really, really long time. As were Chelsea as well. But since Arsenal were obviously winning the league, all of the noise had been Morgan Rogers to Arsenal, and Arteta, he was his top target, and all this, that, and the other. And then Xabi Alonso and Chelsea swoop in, obviously lay the money down on the table, but ultimately, the message that's come from all of the journalists, which I do think is really important, is the fact that Morgan Rogers chose Chelsea, right? So why would that be? Could it be potentially because he saw Eberechi Eze, one of the best attacking midfielders in the Premier League the season before last, join Arsenal and definitely not develop into a better version of that player? Look, he won a title at the end of the day, and you can't ever take that away from him. But does Morgan Rogers want to go to Arsenal and play on their left wing whilst giving up the plaudits, the goals, and the style of football to the likes of Declan Rice, Pierre Hincapié, Saliba, Gabriel, Zubamendi? These are the guys that won them the league at the end of the day. And it's strange, isn't it? Because in most seasons before that, when Arsenal were nearly rans for a long time, they were playing fast, expansive, expressive attacking football with the likes of Bukayo Saka, Martin Odegaard, absolutely banging them away, and they look like a phenomenal attacking team. But fair play to Mikel Arteta, he changed tack. But is that tack that they changed to putting the likes of Morgan Rogers off from joining them? Because why else would you join? Look, Morgan Rogers has gone to Chelsea, where they've got no Champions League. Arsenal have got Champions League. Aston Villa have got Champions League. Do you know what I mean? So he could have stayed at Aston Villa and had Champions League football. He could have gone to Arsenal, the league winners, potentially won the league again at Champions League football, but he didn't. So the question that makes me ask is, are Arsenal going to struggle to strengthen and get the players that they would like to if they want to go back to playing expressive attacking football, or do they even want to go back to playing expressive attacking football? Are they, now they've won a league with it, are they going to carry on with what they've got? And you'd have to argue probably, because at the end of the day, Mikel Arteta has built that squad with centre-backs all playing in the back four. Calafiori playing at left-back and Ben White playing at right-back and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? So Arsenal, you would have to, it would be disingenuous to say that Arsenal aren't the odds-on to win the league, because they've now got the only manager in the Premier League who's won the Premier League before. He is now also the longest-serving manager in the Premier League. But at the same time, if they fail to strengthen, it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because I think, especially as a Chelsea fan, I remember seeing us time and time again winning the Premier League and failing to properly strengthen and going off the boil the season after. It's always a tough pill to swallow, but if one of the reasons in their pomp, Man United won league after league after league after league was because they would strengthen their squad appropriately. And it was the same with Pep Guardiola as well. When they won 3 back-to-back, they were always adding 1 or 2 players here or there to provide competition and to, replace outgoing, aging players and this and that and the other. And it makes sense, but Arsenal are looking like they're struggling to do that at the moment. So as much as based on the history and the fact that Arsenal have just won the Premier League and longest serving manager and, they've got that squad that they've got, doesn't feel like we're going into, when it was Klopp and Pep Guardiola, it always just felt like, even though Klopp only did it once, it always just felt like it was going to be one of Klopp or Guardiola, didn't it? Guardiola specifically, and that obviously turned out to be the case. But for me, it doesn't necessarily feel that way with Arsenal, so I'd like to know what you think about it. Like I say, I think they're odds on, but I don't think they're as likely to retain as Man City were, basically. So the burden is on them to reclaim the title. But the thing that's happened that's really interesting is the Premier League has unfortunately been a duopoly pretty much for the last decade. For the first 7 years of that, it was Man City and Liverpool under Jurgen Klopp and later Arne Slot, obviously. And for the last few seasons, Arsenal have now sort of found their way into that race. Whereas last year, it's not always Man City, obviously, because Liverpool won last year. So it's interesting that it doesn't look like that this season, does it? Because Arsenal are now the front runners, but all of a sudden, all of the spots underneath them feel like they could go to anyone. So look, we're going to talk about essentially the top 6. We've talked a bit about Arsenal already. We're going to talk a bit more about Man City. We're going to talk about Tottenham. We're going to talk about Chelsea. We're going to talk about Liverpool. We're going to talk about a few clubs as well, like Aston Villa and some of the clubs that actually did really well last season, like Sunderland, and Bournemouth and these kind of clubs, like what's going to happen to them. But it looks like next season especially, the Premier League is going to change. It's going to be completely different because there isn't going to be this duopoly of 2 teams that are essentially going to fight it out, as it has been for the last decade. So as far as I can see it, at the very least, Man United, Man City, Liverpool, and I'm going to say it, Chelsea, reasonably should be competing for 2, 3 and 4, if not all of them competing for 2. And there's so many reasons for that. Tottenham, look, respect to Tottenham for staying up and doing what they're doing. And look, I could be completely wrong. I just feel like you can't go from 17th to 2nd. Albeit, Man United did go from 15th to 3rd. So it's not impossible, and maybe it's disingenuous not to consider Tottenham as well. Let's talk about Tottenham first, actually, before we get into some of the bigger boys. Sorry, Tottenham fans, if any of you are watching this. So look, Tottenham have avoided relegation the last 2 years running, and things looked really, really bad. Like I was, I'll be honest, I'm a Chelsea fan. Like I was kind of hoping that it would happen just for the bants, man, just for the bants. But it didn't happen because Tottenham did something they haven't done in a really long time, and they seem to have made the right managerial decision. The first time since Pochettino, they seem to have got someone who actually fits and suits the club in Roberto De Zerbi. So he scraped them out of relegation at the back end of last season, and they wasted no time. This transfer window has been nuts. Tottenham are buying like a top 4 club. And there's a really interesting conversation to have there about the likes of Aston Villa and Newcastle, who have billionaire owners, but they're not generating enough club revenue to spend as much as a Tottenham, who have nearly gotten relegated for the last 2 seasons. So there's a question about fairness to have there. Maybe I'll do that in another video. But it is what it is. Tottenham have got the money to do what they're doing now. Maybe they've been saving it up for a while. Who knows? But just think about the signings that Tottenham have already made and are looking at making. The first massive ones of note, obviously the centre-backs, right? Senesi from Bournemouth. Bournemouth did unbelievable last season. Getting into European competition. Obviously, Iraola has been rewarded with the Liverpool job. Senesi has gone on a free, and he is a phenomenal Premier League player. Jan-Paul van Hecke was the highest rated centre-back outside of the top 6 as per SofaScore last year. So they've got 2 of the best centre-backs outside of the top 6. And 52 million for Van Hecke. Senesi on a free, big wages. Their midfield revamp is absolutely nuts. Sandro Tonali for 100 mil. Mateus Fernandes, £85 million. And they've done really smart things like Andy Robertson from Liverpool on a free transfer. And that's excellent. Premier League winning experience, Champions League winning experience. And even things like Martin Dubravka in goal, a stalwart of the Premier League who's been around for ages, albeit not winning loads of stuff, but he's been around and he's an experienced player. Tottenham are doing something that they haven't done in a while, and they're buying Premier League experienced players almost exclusively. So that might stop. Now we're looking at them moving into buying some attacking targets. They're being linked with Krupi from Bournemouth as well. Bournemouth getting torn apart again, which is probably why Iraola wanted to leave. that'd be 100 mil. That'd be a real, signing of intent. Was he 18, 19 years old, 13 goals in the Premier League last season? Really impressive. And also Savinho from Man City as well. And look, didn't absolutely set the world on fire, but another good Premier League operator. So look, already... Tottenham, their team at the moment, look, they're missing that striker. Do you know what I mean? For me, they're absolutely missing that guy that can just bang them away. But they have done the most important thing, is changed, all of the players out that are essentially costing them games and making them leak goals. Not being able to score is one thing, but it doesn't matter if you can't score if you are conceding goals all the time, because you can win games by scoring goals, but you can at least get a draw by, not conceding them. So they've dealt with that first, obviously. Can Richarlison, does he stay at Tottenham? Does he just kick on now he's got good creators behind him and stuff? I don't know, I doubt it. But yeah, so Tottenham, I don't really consider Tottenham as like title challengers, to be completely honest. I think it's such a massive departure from where they've come from, but at the same time, as we'll get onto in a minute with Manchester United, they did finish 15th and then finish 3rd, and at the end of the day, Tottenham haven't got no European football to worry about or anything like that, is there? So although I wouldn't consider Tottenham to be title challengers, there is a good chance of them challenging for the top 5 if the coefficient in Europe next season is good enough with the English teams that we are guaranteed the 5th Champions League spot and we get 5 places. Tottenham finishing 5th doesn't seem absolutely wild, does it? So look, let's talk about Man United as well. So Man United should be going into the next season realistically thinking we're challenging for the title. There is nuance around it, but at the end of the day, Michael Carrick came in and did a really, really good job getting that team together. Now, the obvious elephant in the room is not only were they not in Europe, but they got knocked out of all of the competitions really, really early on. So they spent the majority of last season only playing 1 game a week. At least the back half of the season, but they got knocked out of most of the cups and in the first few months, didn't they? So that is going to be Michael Carrick's massive challenge. Michael Carrick, probably arguably the least experienced of the managers of the top 6 teams now, I guess you'd have to say, but at the same time, he's proven he can do a good job. They have really strengthened their midfield, the likes of Andre Santos, Yuri Tielemans. They are still interested in getting another midfielder as well. They lost out on Mateus Fernandes. There's some talks about Carlos Baleba, and they've still got some work to do in the midfield, but they've got good attackers and Burmo, Sesko, Cunha, whatever they're going to do with Patrick Dorgu, whether he plays left wing or left back, they've got a solid squad and they've got loads of really good players. So I think just based on the fact that they finished 3rd last season, they have upgraded their squad. They're going into the season on a high. You'd have to consider them title challengers, wouldn't you? They are probably the next odds on, just based on the fact that they're the only ones that aren't going through massive change at the moment, because the rest of the clubs that we're going to talk about are all going through massive change. It's quite fresh and it's happened quite recently. So let's talk about Liverpool. Liverpool actually managed to finish in Europe, 4th place back into last season. Really, really impressive after how bad things went for them. Arne Slot has gone and Andoni Iraola has been given the keys to the castle. Now, Liverpool are yet to make lots of really big signings, but Liverpool are a little bit different, I think, to the rest of the clubs that we're talking about today, because they made so many massive signings last summer. And obviously, Isak didn't kick on. Ekitike had a really good season. Kirkhead, not his best time, but familiar with Andoni Iraola. He'll probably be excited to work with him again, because that's why they bought him in the first place, because he was so good at Bournemouth. Frimpong spent a lot of time injured. Their midfield maybe needs looking at a little bit. I'm not 100% sure. I know they've still got McAllister. I'm not sure 100% what's going on with their midfield. Obviously, Mo Salah is leaving, which is a big thing. But at the same time, I don't think they need this massive squad revamp as much as some of the other clubs do, because they've got so many good players that they bought back into last season that didn't kick on, but now also have a year at the club, are more acclimatised. Kirkes, for instance, like I said, he's worked with Andoni Iraola already. I think Andoni Iraola's football will suit the Liverpool squad more than Arne Slot's football did. Now, when Arne Slot won the league, he didn't change much from... He kind of just like picked up and slowed down a touch the gegenpressing, but ultimately carried on with what Jurgen Klopp was doing in their legacy. So, but I do genuinely think like Andoni Iraola is like, Liverpool fans will love him. It's basketball football. It's attacking. It's dangerous and they will concede goals. But at the same time, they've still got Van Dijk. You know, they've just brought in Jeremy Jacquet. I think there's another centre-back as well. It's so difficult to keep track of all of the players that are going everywhere at the moment because this window's been absolutely mental. But I think, like, you know, Liverpool are talking about Bradley Barcola from PSG, for instance. Like, that would be huge. They've still got Cody Gakpo at the moment. Like, they've got good attacking players. They've got good defenders. They've got a good goalkeeper. And their midfield, you know, Szoboszlai is signing a new deal. Like, he looks really good as well. So they're probably not as much of need of surgery as the likes of Chelsea and Man City are, for instance. Well, I say surgery, you know, we'll get onto them in a minute. But if Andoni Iraola comes in and kicks on, and I think he will do it quicker than Arne Slot did, because Arne Slot started going wrong when he started to play his own brand of football, essentially, and it just didn't suit the squad. It didn't suit the players that had been bought for him, regardless of them spending $500 million in one window, which is absolutely wild. But I do think that these players are going to be better suited to Andoni Iraola's football, and I think he'll probably have a bit more joy with the squad. So look, despite not having an amazing season last season, they still managed to finish 4th. They are also still going to be in the Champions League. But like I say, I don't think they need full surgery. I think Andoni Iraola was the appointment that will make them quite good again. So what are we looking at already before we get into any other teams? Arsenal, expected. Man United, after their season last season, you know, they are strengthening. They've got a little bit more work to do, but they're looking like a good squad. For them, it's really going to come down to, can Michael Carrick deal with the pressure of all of the games? Liverpool, I think it's largely about getting the players that they bought last season to kick on, and Andoni Iraola kind of hitting the ground running with his style of football, which I do think will suit the players that they've got better already. Then we'll talk about Man City, right? Because as a Chelsea fan, I've obviously got thoughts about Maresca, you know, and Man City. Maresca is a massive downgrade from Pep Guardiola. Let's not beat around the bush. Look, Enzo Maresca won the Conference League, which was fun, right? But if he didn't win the Conference League, that would have been poor. There was only one team in the entire Conference League that year that I'd ever heard of before, and it was Real Betis, and it was the final. Do you know what I mean? You know, the hardest thing about the Conference League was the travelling. It wasn't the teams that we were playing, it was the travelling. So yes, he did win that. He's got a championship under his belt, but the caveat to that is that Leicester team was basically full of Premier League players already. A little bit akin to what it's going to be like for West Ham going into the championship. Now, they'll come straight back up because they've basically already got a team full of Premier League players. And he even struggled towards the end of that season, Maresca, with Leicester as well. Leicester fans were not happy by the end of it. They were actually quite happy to see him go. And obviously now the Club World Cup was... That's the biggest one, really. That's the what, and obviously getting Chelsea into the Champions League. Like, they're the ones where it's like, right, okay, he's got that's some credentials. You know, he did pretty well. Now, he comes into this Man City team after snaking Chelsea. Oh, mate. I'm not a big fan of Maresca. It's going to be obvious, but I'll be unbiased about it. I'll be unbiased. It's not a bias to say that, you know, even as a Chelsea fan, I don't think, if you're not a Chelsea fan and you're watching this video, I don't think you'd disagree with me that Enzo Maresca is not as good as a manager as Pep Guardiola. And outside of the downgrade in manager, which is tangible, they've lost Bernardo Silva, who's been one of their best players for years. They're losing John Stones. They're just announced that Rodri's probably going to be going to Real Madrid as well. So that's going to be huge. They're keeping Erling Haaland, potentially. Like, I think the problem with Erling Haaland is he's just kind of too expensive to go anywhere, isn't he, really? Like, he had a really good World Cup. And you know, and he's come out himself and said he's not thinking about anything else apart from Man City, and apparently he's going to stay there. But I'm not going to lie to you, like, I wouldn't be surprised to see an Erling Haaland go somewhere at some point, because I don't see Erling Haaland looking at Enzo Maresca and being like, you're the guy that's going to take me to the next level after Pep Guardiola. So what you've got left at Man City is a squad full of really good young players. You've got Nico O'Reilly, you've got Rayan Cherki, you've got Doku, Savinho maybe, depending on what goes on there. Not sure about what's going on with Marmoush either. Kuzanov looks like a really good player. Mark Gurhey, excellent signing. Antoine Semenyo. They have got good players, but all of their stalwarts and all of their players that, you know, for the most part contributed to all of their success in their winning, they're all going. So Maresca isn't coming in to take, like, you know, it's not the same as when Arne Slot went to Liverpool. Arne Slot went to Liverpool and literally took over basically a title-winning team. It's actually not the same for Enzo Maresca. Enzo Maresca is coming in to work with a young squad with lots of talent, which is something he's done before, but he did make it look difficult sometimes. You know, apparently he wants Malagusto, which would be interesting. They spent £116 million on Elliot Anderson. That's a massive signing. You know, Will it be worth it? Only time will tell, I guess. But at the same time, it's like it's the Maresca angle more than the squad for me. Like, the squad is good. The squad isn't elite anymore. You've got an elite striker in Erling Haaland, and arguably elite goalkeeper in Gianluigi Donnarumma. But a lot of the elite middle, like your defenders and your midfielders, are kind of gone, and they're going to be really, really difficult to replace. Like, Bernardo Silva was still playing so much. John Stones, not so much. Rodri was playing whenever he could play, but he has been injured a lot over the last few seasons as well. I think he's having a back operation soon, actually, which is weird because of the whole Real Madrid connection. But, it is possible that Enzo Maresca goes in and gets them all to click together. And because they've got quality there at the end of the day. They've got quality, but not enough for me to think that he's going to come in and definitely challenge Arsenal. Like, this is why I think Man City have got the same chance as Man United as of right now, whereas all the seasons past it's like, well, Pep's probably going to win the league unless someone else manages to pip him to it. It doesn't feel like that with Enzo Maresca's Man City at the moment. It feels like second place could go to one of Man United, Liverpool, Man City, and potentially Chelsea, who we'll talk about a little bit as well. As a Chelsea fan, I'll try not to talk about Chelsea too much on this channel because I actually have another channel for that. It's called The Stamford Sink, so go and check it out if you like Chelsea content in particular. Chelsea losing Maresca is the best thing that's happened to us in 4 years, if I'm completely honest. And I say that because, I look at what's happening with Chelsea now. Xabi Alonso comes in, instantly everything starts to feel better. Now, I have this thing, right? I think if you look at any club that went through a difficult period and managed to turn it around and start winning things, it always starts with the manager. It's never the players, it's never the ownership changing. It's never anything else apart from the manager. Liverpool didn't win the title for a really, really long time, like never won a Premier League. Jurgen Klopp comes in and gets them the Champions League, turns things around. They go and win the Premier League, and he sets Arne Slot up to go and win the Premier League. Wenger obviously had his moment, and then they tried out Unai Emery at Arsenal, and it didn't really work, so they got rid of him. They brought in Arteta, and they backed him, and he was the guy, and now they've gone and done well. It's just one of those, isn't it? Like, even Real Madrid, when Real Madrid went through that period after Zidane, and they got Lopetegui, and then, a couple of other guys, I can't even really remember who, but it wasn't really working out. They bring back Zidane, lo and behold, they start winning again. The manager is almost always the catalyst, right? And Xabi Alonso is the best manager that Chelsea have hired since Antonio Conte. Look, Tuchel won us the Champions League, right? But when Tuchel was brought in, he didn't have as much, but in terms of winning credentials as Xabi Alonso does. That double with Leverkusen is unbelievable. I was watching some football content earlier, and someone said that people are really understating how impressive that Leverkusen double is. He said that Bayer Leverkusen winning the league in Germany is like Brentford winning the Premier League here. Like, Bayer Leverkusen were just like never close to it. Do you know what I mean? And Xabi Alonso just turned them into absolute beasts. So there's the Xabi Alonso effect. And then there's the effect, extraneously, that Xabi Alonso has had on the ownership and on the transfer window, because we've got Marco Palestro, we've got Morgan Rogers. All of a sudden, we're looking at experience again. We're looking at Pep Chavaria. We tried for Granit Xhaka. Obviously, that was a bit embarrassing. It didn't work out. But we're talking about John Stones. Do you know what I mean? So we're looking to add experience into the team now as well. He's already improved the mood in the camp. You can see that from pre-season. There's loads of stories about Cole Palmer coming out. So, the Chelsea's problem for the last few seasons hasn't necessarily been about the core of quality. It's been about management, because Maresca wasn't good enough, Graham Potter wasn't good enough, Liam Rosenior wasn't good enough, Pochettino ultimately wasn't good enough. We weren't hiring the right managers, and we weren't supplementing the good players in our squad with quality depth and people around them in order to make them, the best that they can be. But now we've got João Pedro, who's a proper striker. You got Morgan Rogers coming in, who seems like the perfect foil to Cole Palmer for, attacking midfield. We've just signed Maxence Lacroix, who is finally a good centre-back to partner Levi Colwill. The goalkeeper situation still maybe a little bit worrying. We've got an excellent midfielder in Moises Caicedo, and hopefully that midfield situation is going to be addressed soon. It just feels really good in a way that it hasn't as a long time as a Chelsea fan. I see no reason why. Look, I'm not necessarily saying I'm expecting us to win the league, but I don't see why we couldn't do as well as a Liverpool or a Manchester United if Xabi Alonso comes in and hits the ground running with the winning credentials that he's got, and with the squad that's going to be available to him, and hopefully with the owners taking their foot off the gas in terms of like getting involved in running the club, right? So I just think it's a really interesting season that we've got in front of us. And there's, we'll spend the last part of the video talking about some of the things that probably won't happen again. This feels harsh to say, but I've got a feeling that Aston Villa are not going to kick on, because they've lost Luca Dean to PSG. They've sold Morgan Rogers, and I'm not even sure if they've replaced Luca Dean yet. They've got Manzambi, who does look like a good player. They've got Garnacho. Look, the only way that works out is if Unai Emery turns Garnacho into a beast, because if you replace Morgan Rogers with Garnacho, you're going to have a worse season. If both of them have exactly the same seasons at their respective new clubs, that's going to take so much away from Villa. So Unai Emery is brilliant. I really, really like Unai Emery, but it's not even, they've got some aging players as well, like Ollie Watkins in his 30s now. They've got injuries. Amadou Onana, the Belgian midfielder, absolutely phenomenal player. He is injured. They've just lost Yuri Tielemans to Man United as well. There's a lot of surgery going on at Aston Villa at the moment, and it's not of their own making in the ground. Well, it kind of is because of the UEFA stuff, right? They keep getting in trouble. But they don't have the funds to just go and kick on and buy the players that they want. So they're having to sell players. They're having to lose players. They're having to reduce their squad cost ratio. There's a lot of things they're having to do to just make sure that they can have like a decent squad for next season. So I really like Aston Villa, and Unai Emery's done a phenomenal job. And it would be interesting to see if losing the star quality that they've lost, the likes of Yuri Tielemans, the likes of Morgan Rogers, Luca Dean was an absolutely solid left back, Amadou Onana, quality midfielder, he's going to be out for ages. Can Unai Emery scrap together another team and go again? Bearing in mind they are also in the Champions League next year, which is going to be a lot of pressure because it's a lot of games. And then there's all of the crazy stories from last season, like Sunderland, like getting promoted and doing as well as they did, Brentford doing as well as they did, Bournemouth doing as well as they did, Brighton doing as well as they did, Everton doing as well as they did. Are all of these teams going to carry on just doing really well, or is it going to be difficult because some of these clubs, like your Chelseas, your Manchester United, not Man U from last season, but your Tottenhams, are expected to maybe jump back up? I think a couple of things is going to happen. So there's going to be kind of two things that I think is going to happen in the Premier League next year. I think you're going to see a bit of a return to form in terms of the top of the table. I think the clubs at the top of the table are probably going to be more likely, like the top 6 to 8 is probably going to be more likely to be the clubs you expect to be there. Bournemouth probably not going to do as well next season, are they? Because not only have they lost their manager, but they're losing players and stuff as well. Eli Junior Krupi, 13 goals for them last season, 100 mil target for Tottenham. They've lost Senesi already. So, the thing that might still happen is the trend of mid-table teams winning trophies, which I'm totally here for. I absolutely love it. Crystal Palace winning the FA Cup and then the Europa Conference League. Aston Villa winning the Europa League. Newcastle winning the League Cup. And this is all great stuff, and I absolutely love this. I really hope that continues. But in terms of the Premier League table, I do expect the top of the table to kind of go back to where it was, and some of these teams that did really well last season, like can Sunderland go and do it again? That's a massive question. They haven't had people coming in and ripping their team apart, and I know that because we tried. We tried to get Granit Xhaka and they were like, no, you can't have him. So maybe Sunderland have got a shot, but can Brentford go again? Can Everton go again? Everton are quietly building an alright squad, to be honest. But yeah, I just think it looks like from, the zoomed out perspective, Man United, you would expect to do quite well next season. Liverpool, I feel like are probably going to do well next season. Man City, I don't expect to be, up there challenging neck and neck with Arsenal for the title for the whole season. But with the quality of their squad, and albeit I don't think Enzo Maresca is an amazing manager, like he's proven he can get into the top 4 with a young developing squad as he did with Chelsea. So that's, got to be accounted for. Xabi Alonso at Chelsea and De Zerbi at Tottenham. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's just going to be a fascinating Premier League next season, I think. The thing that I think is really interesting about it is the duopoly is not going to be there anymore. Arsenal will be expected to lead. They will be expected to lead because, like I said, Arteta, longest serving manager, and they just won the Premier League and got into the Champions League final as well last season, even though they didn't win it. But everything behind that now is a bit of a question mark, right? It's really, really a bit of a question mark because all of these squads, all of these teams have got new managers, and none of these managers, bar Xabi Alonso, have got much in the way of winning credentials. Roberto De Zerbi, not really won much. If anything, actually, I'm not sure. He's done well, don't get me wrong. I don't think he won the League of AC Milan or anything like that. And obviously he didn't. I think he went to Marseille or Lyon, was it, in France for a bit, and he didn't exactly challenge for the leagues there either. Iraola, great manager, not winning anything. Enzo Maresca has some winning credentials, but I would argue they are dwarfed by Xabi Alonso's winning credentials in the grand scheme of things. So I just think we're looking at a new age, new look Premier League, and it's going to make it really difficult to predict what happens next season. So guys, that is me waffling for half an hour about what I think is going to happen with the Premier League next season, but I really want to know, what do you think is going to happen? Are Arsenal just going to run away with it again? Will Enzo Maresca actually just pick up from where Pep Guardiola left off? Are Xabi Alonso and Andoni Iraola the new kids on the block? Have they got chances to come in and challenge for the title? Or could Roberto De Zerbi do the absolute impossible and take Tottenham from nearly being relegated to nearly being Premier League champions? Nice one, guys. This has been the first episode of Total Football. Thanks very much for sticking around until the end if you did, and I'll catch up with you all very, very soon. Take it easy. Peace.